Okay. So sorry, I need to restart because we are preparing for this recording for whoever who are not able to join, because some of them are not in the same time zone as we are. So again, good evening, everyone. So my name is Amanda. On behalf of Taiwan School of Taiwanese American Center of Northern California in Silicon Valley, welcome to join our Sustainable Living series. Taiwanese American Center has been established and served the Silicon Valley community for 17 years. Yes, you heard me right, 17 years. It was brought to life by a group of Taiwanese Americans who gather as a big family with a dream come true to build a home for all Taiwanese immigrant families. The organization further outreaches to serve the community at large for the goal of diversity, inclusion, and equality. They do so by delivering a variety of enrichment classes for kids and youth, and also financial education for adults. With a facility of 8,600 square feet, seniors in the community enjoy a week-long wellness programs from physical activities, cultural, musical, technology, etc. The belief is a community embracing diversity and inclusion, empowering everyone to be authentic, will ensure a sustainable future. This year, inspired by United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, we have planned a series of virtual events. We are honored to have Jill Chang to kick off this sustainable living with 2 talks. Today, she brings us the much anticipated topic by all parents with introverted learners. Jill is someone who doesn't follow a traditional script. She entered the sports industry as a professional sports agent at the age of 26 and successfully signed 5 major league contracts for her clients within 18 months. She's experienced working internationally and now devoted to international philanthropy. Jill is also a fellow of Harvard Seed for Social Innovation and was featured in Girls in Tech Taiwan 40 Under 40 in 2018. Her book, Quiet is a Superpower, was a #1 bestseller in Taiwan and stayed amongst the top 10 for 20 weeks. Quiet is a Superpower is also the first Taiwanese nonfiction book to be translated into English by Barrett Kohler, an independent publisher based in the San Francisco Bay Area. Jill's book is the first they have acquired and translated from an international author. Jill is a complete introvert. Yes, you heard me right again, and based in Taipei, Taiwan, with her family. She travels across the world with a passion to help introverts learn and thrive in their unique ways. We're also very honored to have Leona Chen to be our host in the second part of the event. Leona is the editor-in-chief for TaiwaneseAmerican.org and an outstanding second-generation Taiwanese American. Leona spent much of her childhood weekends and after school at Taiwan School. So we're so proud to have her come back to help Taiwan School. I know you will enjoy her interactive conversations with Jill. At the end, we will save some time for your live questions. As a friendly reminder, all participants will be muted to ensure the quality. Please utilize the private chat box on your screen for sending your questions anytime during the event. Don't forget, every registrant will have the opportunity to win Jill's autograph book. Now, let me turn it to Jill. Jill in Taipei, Taiwan. Let's begin.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you so much, everyone, for having me. I'm Jill. I'm calling from Taipei, Taiwan. I know I'm overdressed, but it's the coldest day in Taipei for the last decade. So it's really cold here, and we don't, it's a tropical/subtropical island, so we don't have heaters. So I need to wear a lot to keep myself warm. So thank you for enduring me, my dress. Let me start sharing my screen and see if you can see my screen. Okay, can you guys see it? All right.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you so much for having me. This is the first time that I talk to Taiwanese American communities, and I am super excited. So today we're going to talk about how to prepare your introverted children or introverted learners for the road. I'm going to start with a fun test to find out how introverted you are or how extroverted you are with just 8 questions. So I'm going to show you 8 descriptions. And if you find that description fits you, you add 1 point to your total score. And if you find it not very relevant to yourself, you can just skip it and it's 0. So at the end of the test, we'll have a total number and we'll see from the total score of how introverted or how extroverted you are. All right, so are you ready? Okay, so the first one is, I like talking to individuals rather than large groups. And the second, when I'm exhausted, I only want to go home. 3, I get tired easily when facing people who talk fast. 4, if possible, I would avoid crowds. 5, I get tired, even unpleasant, when being in the crowd for too long. 6, sometimes I feel exhausted after tense and noisy conversations. 7, I don't need many friends, and I value true, deep friendships. And the last one, interruption and unexpected situations make me tired. All right, so it's time to add up all your scores. You'll get a score between 0 and 8. And if you get 10, that may mean you need a coffee. So do we have the scores yet? All right, let's see. If your score is from 6 to 8, that means you're more likely to be on the introverted side of the spectrum. And if your point is 3 to 5, that means you're somewhere in between introvert and extrovert. It's called ambivert. And if your score is 0 to 2, that means you're more on the extroverted side of the spectrum. So this is very simple test of knowing yourself, and it's also a test that it can find out how your children or how your family, colleagues are located in the spectrum. And if you're interested in a more detailed test, it's always easy to find the MBI test. It only takes a Google search, and there's a free test on the internet. It takes about 20 minutes. And at the end of the test, they will assign you a category. And the category will start with either E, which means extroverted, or I, which means introverted. And for your information, extroversion and introversion is not like black and white. It's actually a spectrum. So for example, this person, he scored 58% of extroversion with 42% of introversion. And this may change to has with this person's different life experience, social interactions with others, with this different experience, things would change. So what happens tonight may not be the same as your score in like 6 months or a year. So this is not like when you're born an introvert, you will be an introvert for your whole life. This will change. And for myself, after taking numerous of tests, I'm actually a 98% introvert, which is very, very introverted. So I wrote this book and I got a lot of positive feedback from people that they thought they're introverts, or they didn't even think that they're introverts, but it turned out that they're very relevant to the topic. So at the end of the day, introverts and extroverts, they are very different in various aspects of lives. For example, introverts are deep thinkers. They like to know the context before making any decisions. They're more detail-oriented. They pay attention to risks and possibilities. And they're very good at achieving long-term goals and doing all that planning to achieve those goals. They can focus on selective goals, but they're not very good at multitasking or having multiple plans going on at the same time. and they're motivated by values and meanings. Whereas extroverts, they respond very quickly. They're very good at making decisions and connections at the moment. They don't really enjoy repetitive work. They're good at sprinting, but they're probably not the best marathon runners. They're good at multitasking, and they're motivated by external stimuli. So this is just to give you a very brief or very general introduction of the different traits of introverts and extroverts. At the end of the day, the major difference of between introverts and extroverts is the way they gain energy, how they recharge themselves. If you look at the left-hand side of the picture, the person is being alone reading a book. That's exactly how introverts recharge ourselves. We're getting energies from within, so we like being alone to recharge ourselves. Whereas the extroverts, they like interactions, and they actually gain energies from outside. So after a long day, if you find your colleague or family members, they tend to find friends for happy hours. They like hanging out with friends. They go dancing and singing with friends after a very long, tiring day. That may means that they are more on the extroverted side of the spectrum. Over the past 2-3 years, because of the success of my book, I was invited to various corporations, schools, universities to give speeches. And surprisingly, when I talk to C-suite people, when I talk to the managing level of corporations, the most frequent asked questions are not about managing their team or not maximizing the effects of their leadership. It's more about, how do I deal with my introverted children? So I was actually very surprised, because I never realized, wow, so we need more advocates for introverted, especially introverted children. And among those questions, they come from different types. For example, the parents would be interested to know, like, how do their introverted children make friends? Is this person too quiet, or is that a disadvantage? And how do I help to build them? How do I help them to build confidence? And what's really on your mind? Because they don't say anything, and I have no idea what they're thinking. And also, they tend to ask a lot of questions without doing much. Is that an issue? So there are things like this. And after collecting all those data and doing my research, I actually come down to 3 tips that I would like to share with all of you when you're having an introverted child at home, or when you're dealing with when you're trying to help your introverted learner. So the first tip is always to provide background information, space, and flexibility as much as possible. So there was one time when I was talking to a huge international corporation, and after my speech, one of their leaders approached to me, and she asked, okay, so I have a 14-year-old son. He is really introverted. And over the weekend, I actually invited him to a family gathering. And those family members all the members are actually the ones that he's been familiar with for all his life. But he asks so many questions. Does that mean he doesn't want to go? Or how do I encourage him to go? Because it's just a family gathering. So I was like, okay, did you tell him who will be there and where that will be and how long will that be? All kinds of information like this. And the lady was so shocked. She was like, why do I need to provide all those information? Those are the people who he already knew, and he has no problem to interact with. They're family members. It's just a family gathering. So I said, no. For introverts, you need to provide as much information as possible so that they can better prepare themselves to the event. For example, if he knew who would be there, he would be able to plan ahead of what topics can he talk to the other relatives. And for example, if he knew in advance that how long the drive would be, he would be able to prepare for the road. Like, do I bring books? Do I bring my video games? It's very different if it's a 30-minute drive to a 2-hour drive. You need to tell him all those different information so that he can actually plan ahead and have a clear mind of what to expect. And things like that, it's very important for introverts because we depend on a lot of information to make our decisions. And also, it's always helpful to give us space and flexibility when needing decisions from us. Like what I said, introverts are not best at making quick decisions. We need time to absorb all those informations, so that having flexibility and space is really critical for introverts. And the second tip is that I think parents can always encourage introverts to take baby steps out of the comfort zone. I know it's not it's not very common because the whole society tend to encourage us to be very aggressive, to be very how do I say it? to really expand our limit as much as we can. You can see slogans like just do it or say yes to everything. That's how the society is encouraging us, but it might not be the best solution for introverts. So for example, if an introvert is afraid of height, many people might encourage them to, okay, just go skype diving just once and you'll get rid of that afraid of height. But that probably doesn't work for introverts because that would just kill the whole thing. What I would do in that case is to encourage them to take baby steps. For example, you can do you want to try step on the chair for now? And if you're comfortable with the height of the chair, next time you can try to stand on the table. And the next time, maybe you can get on the second floor and third floor and gradually expand your comfort zone. Introverts are not very good at going to extremes, but having the flexibility of expanding their comfort zone gradually, it would be very helpful in helping them and guiding them to try something they're not very familiar with yet. So yeah, always take baby steps. Do not take them to extremes. And the third is to ensure them it's really okay if you don't achieve your goals in the first try, or if you don't succeed in this, it's really okay. The way I'm saying this because introverts, especially introverted teenagers and children, we tend to overthink and we tend to over-reflect. And a lot of times we blame ourselves on everything. There are a thousand like dramas going on all the time. So before we take actions, it's already very draining for us just to think about what's going to happen. And for parents or for teachers, for educators, I think it's really important for you to really show them if it doesn't go the way you would like it to be or you wish it to be, it's really okay. I'm here to support you anyway. And I'm here to help you and handhold you whenever you need me. And because that support is critical for their mental stability and mental confidence. So I would say the third tip for parents and for people who are working with introverts is always to give them the confidence that it's really okay to take another try, and it's really okay if you don't do it the first time. So here's some recap. I think the way introverts function is very different from extroverts. We gain energies from being alone. We gain energies from within. So we think very deeply, and we take care, we value risks. We pay attention to risks. So we're good risk managers, and we value meaningfulness. What I mean by a value meaningfulness is that if we found that something is valuable or meaningful or really consistent with our belief, we would do it without much external motivation, because our motivation actually comes from within. So if you're parents, that may be a place you want to start when you're encouraging your children to do something new. So as a parent, we can always, one, provide as much as background information, space, and flexibility to your introverted learners. And second, encourage them to take baby steps out of their comfort zone, just to expand the comfort zone gradually without really going to the extreme or going too far out of their comfort zone. And the third and the last is ensure them that it's okay to not achieving their goals at the first times, and it's okay to not to be successful, because we all have our own talents and paths, and what's most important is to really support them and ensure them that you're there for them anyway. So thank you so much. I'm gonna hand the floor to Leona.
Okay, so Jill, first of all, thank you so much for that presentation. As the two of us have talked offline before, we're both introverts, and I think that this can be a small bit of reassurance to both introverts and parents of introverts, that you can be very aware of what your personality leans towards and still do things that might be really difficult, like a live Q&A that we're doing right now. I also think it's so funny that in our assessment early on in your presentation, we saw that a sign of introversion is a tendency to avoid crowds. When those of us in the US, like regardless of how we identify as extroverts or introverts, we've been avoiding crowds for the past year to practice social distancing. So I'm sure everybody scored at least one on that assessment. But I was personally so grateful to have read your book, especially because you talk about the cultural differences that are really rooted in extroverted or introverted inclinations. So for us being, Taiwanese American or Asian American, we might come from households that really value and honor introversion and quietness and reflection, but then go to work or school and feel pressure to succeed in ways that perform extroversion as this sort of prerequisite to success. And that can be a lot of pressure, because it's not just about your skills or your competencies, it's about how you deliver them in a very culturally specific way. And so I benefited a lot from your book, and I know others will as well. So yeah, so we did a self-assessment earlier, and I think regardless of how everybody scored, we're learning that practicing a lot of self-awareness and understanding allows us to work with our introversion and see it as not any sort of weakness, but as symptoms of our humanness, and liking some situations more than others is not a moral judgment. It's just the way that we are, and there's a way to work with that. So on that note, I was thinking about what you wrote in your book, and I've listened to your podcast, and you talk about this idea of introverts moving away from a sense of I have to survive in an extroverted world, and being able to move into a mental space where you think about how can I empower myself to actually thrive in any circumstance. Can you talk more about the difference between what it means to survive versus the ability to thrive?
Yeah, sure. So I can actually share my personal experience as an example. Before I was 30 years old, I was really in the survival mode, because I thought, oh, I'm too quiet, and people don't like quiet people. So I need to work very hard to be like the others, because that's the way how people survive. That's the way how people succeed, right? But eventually that's actually very tiring, both mentally and physically. And I feel like I was putting on an armor, and the armor was getting heavier and heavier to the extent that I couldn't breathe. So the turning point was when I read Susan Cain's book. It's called Quiet. The book actually changed my life, because that's when I realized that, oh, maybe I'm not worse than other people. It's just not the way I function. So after reading that book and after having that self-awareness and starting to embrace myself, I started to do things in my own way, but achieving the same goals. So instead of mimicking the others or making myself in an extroverted way, I started to think more strategically to find ways that suits me better, suits my personalities better. So I think that's the major difference from the survival mode, where you need to survive and you need to be someone else to succeed, versus the thrive mode, where you can actually be yourself and find your strength, find your niche, and do things that the other people cannot do. So the transition, I'm not saying that moving from the survival mode to a thriving mode is easy. It actually took a lot of trial and errors, took a lot of self-awareness and even self-doubts. There were definitely moments that I thought, am I on the right track, or do I just go back to mimicking the others and pretending that I'm an extrovert, and so that people would like me better? There are certainly moments like this that that I was confused of who I am or what I should do to do better. But at the end of the day, it's actually very worthy, because being my authentic self make things much easier, and it actually makes more sense. So right now I feel like I can say confidently that I am introvert, and even with that, I can still get things done, and even I can do things better than my colleagues, because I am very aware of what my strengths are, and I know what I can do and what I cannot do. So having that self-awareness and embracing your authentic self is really important and beneficial thing to do.
For sure. And I think that journey towards self-awareness and confidence is something that every parent wants their child to go through and to be able to support them through. And I'm sure that like the whole thrive versus survive thing is something very on the top of mind for a lot of parents, is how do I move my kid from survival mode to the ability to feel empowered to pursue their best selves. So in that regard, we're going to focus a lot of our questions on this session about parenting. So earlier you brought up an example of a child who really craves having as much information as possible before making a decision. So how can parents or any individuals reflect on their own behaviors and their preferences to determine which are the qualities of introversion versus shyness or a lack of confidence? Or like, is there a difference between these three?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that's very good question. I got asked a lot, especially from parents. Let me share that introverts actually come in different types. Stereotypes may think that introverts are always quiet, lone wolves, even antisocial. But I've seen numerous types of introverts. I've seen talkative introverts, loud introverts, aggressive introverts. So it's all about how we gain energies. It's not about how we act, right? So that's, I just wanted to clarify that in the beginning, just so people know that there are different types of introverts. Yes, some introverts are shy, but not all the introverts are shy. Being shy means that you would be nervous or timid in the company of other people. Introverts not necessarily get anxious when being in a group. We're just more comfortable being in a smaller group. Like we can deal with a larger group too, but that's more draining for us. So we're more comfortable within a group of like 5, 6, less than 10 people. And speaking of confidence, lacking confidence is a different story too. Being confident means that when some of your expectations are not met, people continue to be positive and to accept themselves. So it's more about believing in yourself when you encounter difficulties and believing that you will find a solution. And I don't think this has much to do with introversion or extroversion. It's more on how you see yourself, how you understand yourself, and believe in yourself. So I guess the confusing part, especially for parents, is that when in a new environment, it's not always easy to tell whether your child it doesn't interact with the others because he or she is shy, or he or she is introverted, or just lack of confidence. That's very common in the new environment, because your children is not very familiar with the people, very familiar with the environment. It's something new to them. But when you have, as the time goes by and you have more time and opportunities to collect information, you'll tell the difference. For example, I've seen children who start to make friends after week 3, and before that 3rd week, parents are very anxious of like, okay, is my child doing well in that new school, or do I make a wrong decision sending him to a debate team, or things like that. But as the time goes by, you will be able to collect for more information to tell that if your child is shy or introverted, or just need more confidence. I think that's the way we try to handhold or accompany our children in that path, especially when fitting into a new environment.
For sure. And I remember first of all, I'm not a parent, but I am a child of a parent who was always very aware of my introverted qualities. And I remember being a child and really being drained by like being at preschool and feeling like social interactions were more of a burden than they should have been. And I didn't know how to express that. So I would tell my mom about a story of a little piggy who like was exhausted by the idea of making friends. And I think little stories like that, when you pay attention to your children and kind of pick up on what they're trying to say, you're able to gather the information you need to help them move forward in ways that are more productive and more helpful for them. So once we have that awareness piece, I know that your second step was to encourage them to take baby steps out of their comfort zone. You talk about the importance of being comfortable with ambiguity, because that's just how life is, which is a really difficult ask for introverts or literally anybody. But we perform the best when we are given the time and space to plan and sort of map out our thoughts and concerns, but that's not always possible. So thinking about a school environment or like a team sport, what are some of those baby steps that parents can work with their children to build those internal habits of flexibility and resilience over time?
So as I mentioned during the presentation, introverts tend to think a lot. In some occasions, we overthink and over-reflect and tend to blame ourselves for everything. So in addition to prepare your children for the upcoming new situations, it's always helpful to guide them through the after-action review, or AAR, when it happens. So talking about building internal habits of flexibility and resilience, I think doing AARs all over and over again would be beneficial, because that's how you guide your children to different kinds of situations and let them get them familiar with the uncertainties and ambiguities in life, or in a new situation, or in a new environment. So there are usually 3 parts in an AAR. The first is what you did right, and the second is what can be improved, and what are the lessons learned. So I would always encourage parents to start with what they did good, because that would boost their confidence. And it's always nice if you put like a majority or even half of the AAR on what they did good, because that would help them to understand, okay, maybe I mess it up a little bit, but that's just like 10%. 90 or 80 to 90% I did very well. So the only thing I need to do is to adjust that 10% so I can be like very perfect or very well in my next try. So always start with what you did good and what you did amazing, what you did right. And for the last two parts, it would be good to use specific descriptions instead of general feelings. For example, instead of saying, you may hear your children say, oh, I screwed up the last part of the presentation. You can actually guide them to say, no, you didn't screw up the last part of the presentation, but you did not do well in the last part of the presentation because maybe the logic wasn't clear enough. Maybe you didn't collect enough information beforehand. Find specific reasons and then move on to third. Next time, I can try to do X and Y. For example, next time I can try to put the call to action items into 3 bullet points, or next time maybe I can end with a strong statement. Things like that would be very beneficial for your children to know that you're not messing things up. There's just some adjustments you need to make to be successful as you wish to be. So I think that's a good practice, because that would help your children to really come down to the specific improvements and lessons that they can learn from this experience, instead of having all those emotions and negative feelings come over and over again on their minds, and they got trained on that a lot. So yeah, again, AAR, after action reviews with specific descriptions would be very helpful.
And that sounds like a really healthy way for kids and parents to not think so in such extremes of success versus failure, and that you're able to pinpoint specific moments that can be improved, but also moments that can give you a lot of confidence. I love that this flows well into point number 3, which is it's okay for children to fail. And that resilience after failure can be a really important part of character development, but you don't get to build that muscle if you're never given the opportunity to fail. So I have a question from a parent, actually. If you have any suggestions on things that parents can say to their kids to help them understand that they might not always succeed, they might have really great goals that they don't achieve. What happens when they don't achieve those goals?
It's what happens if they don't achieve those goals. It's not the end of the world. So trust me, introverts have thought about that in advance. They knew, oh, okay, this may fail, and they are actually prepared for that. So pick myself, for example, I worry a lot. So every time I try something new, my default is for myself is that, okay, I may not be successful for the first time, and it's okay, and because I'm going to fail. That sounds very passive, but that's the way I think, and that actually gives me the mental preparation for not being amazing in the first time. So I think for parents, it's too. Of course, it's always easier for parents to encourage your children because you're an adult and you know your children and the children trust you. So it's always easier for parents to do that. So first, encourage. And the second one is that to ensure them that even you fail, you can always come back to me and we can work on this together, and to make sure that there's other chances to fix it up. And of course, they'll be like, no, there will not be another opportunities. It will be the end of the world. And at this time, I think parents can always.
他们其实不太穿背心这种。
Yeah, I think parents can always ensure their children from especially from your own experience, saying that yeah, I know what you're thinking, and trust me, this will not be the last time you have this opportunity, because as we get old, we know that things come round and round, right? So I think it's an important message for the children to really express to their for parents to express their children that be prepared, but not to be over worried.
Yeah, these are, like, I want to acknowledge that these are very hard conversations to have even among adults. And so to have to talk to your parent about these things, about these like failure and success can feel really stressful. And then I'm sure as a parent, trying to encourage your child out of this like very extreme thinking of like failure, success can also be quite a challenge. So a question for my parent is, what if my child is very stubborn about certain things, but doesn't really know how to communicate them, whether that's an age thing or an emotional maturity or an experience thing? How do I get my child to open up and communicate more so we can understand what their situation is and how to try to help? What are the things we should be looking for?
Yeah, I think maybe if like talking in person is not the perfect or is not the most effective ways, maybe we can try to explore other creative ways. For example, I'm super introverted and I don't like talking to people, except for the people that I really trust. So what I did with my mom is that I write blogs. And it's more like exchanging diaries. I write my stories, my feelings on my blog, and my mom would read my blog, and so that I don't need to tell the whole story to her, and she knows what's going on with my life and what my struggles are, what my stresses are. So that's the one way of me and my mom communicating. My mom writes her own too, so that I see from her perspective. And that works well for me and my mom. So what I'm not saying that writing a blog is the best way for everyone, but my point is really to try to find a more flexible or creative ways of communication. And I think being in the same family is not easy, especially in the pandemic, because you guys are stick together 24/7. It's always beneficial to try things together. Think about team building. Imagine your family as a team. How do you do team building at work? That same method can be applied in your family too. So especially for Asian families or Taiwanese American or Taiwanese families, it's always like parents tend to have like are not very equal to their children, because we know more, so we want to teach, and we love you, so we expect you to be some type of person. But I think every family have their own way of expressing love, and I think really love is the foundation and is the basic of everything. So I would really encourage parents and also children to be involved in different activities and to explore different possibility of like sharing their thoughts and exchanging ideas. And gradually, I think that would build trust. And gradually, after that trust, I think that will build a more creative way of communication.
Yeah, the cultural piece is important because I feel like in Taiwanese or Asian cultures, parents have an authority that seems almost unquestionable. Like they are always right because they're the parent. It's like the cyclical loop. But I think parents could also be very aware that you could be right in logic, but maybe have a reaction or a method that is wrong and that it's inappropriate for the child receiving them. And so I can think of two situations where this might play out. One is you are like the extroverted parent of an introverted child, and you're just like, why are we not on the same wavelength? So what are some ways for an extroverted parent to really self-reflect or even self-regulate and thinking about how is the way that I engage with this world different from my child's, and how do we create a balance between the two of us?
Yeah, I think for extroverted parents, it's always helpful to be patient, to be observant, observative, and to be respectful. Like what I said, it's all about coming back to the basics. It's love, not expectation or anything else. It's I really like the phrase that you want to prepare your children for the road, not prepare the road for your children. So it's a journey that requires a lot of hand-holding. It requires a lot of communication and company. And you're actually traveling, like taking the journey with your children. So imagine that your children is your travel mate, and you need to make this trip together. And what to do if the person does not speak to you or doesn't speak much at all? So I would say that really be patient and really to try to catch up all the detailed or unwritten information from your children, and then be respectful of the space and flexibility that he or she needs. I think it's not very easy to find that balance. I've talked to numerous of extroverted parents with introverted children. It's because the way introverts and extroverts function very differently. So what's good for you might not be very good for your children. For example, you like parties, but your children only wants to stay home, or you want to have like coming to your friend's house, going to your friend's house for a visit, but your children only want to, read a book in your living room. That's very different, and having that understanding of how different types of people function and interact with each other is beneficial for that mutual understanding, and then build that communication channel. So it's always helpful to ask or discuss together, what's our plan for the weekend? I want to invite friends over. Is that okay? Or I can have my friends over, but they will only stay for 2 hours. Would that be okay for you? And if you don't want to talk to them, it's always fine to go back to your room. Is that okay? So I think having all those flexibilities and setting boundaries for the introverts is very beneficial, and it actually providing them the sense of safety, that they have their own comfort zone.
I love the metaphor about the road and preparing your child for the road. I feel like a lot of parents use the same metaphor. Like, I feel like my mom often tells me that she's only my GPS. She can't drive for me. She can't tell me where to go. I tell her where I want to go, and she'll try to help me. But if she says turn left and I turn right, that's out of her control. So I think that's something that a lot of parents feel. But what if you are like an introverted parent of an introverted child? And so the challenge, I think, would be less about how do I understand my kid, because you fundamentally do. It's more about like, how do I model good positive behaviors that prove that I'm working on ways to empower myself that my child can then imitate and hopefully incorporate into their own lives.
I think that's super important, because parents are the children's first role models, right? And we learn so much from our parents. So having an introverted parent or parents is actually very beneficial for introverted children, because you have the chance to really show them that you can be cool, that you can embrace your personality while being introverted. And it's not such a big deal. Even when everybody was talking about like, we need to be like aggressive, we need to say yes to everything, you can always have your own style and still be successful. So I think having that role model is really important for introverted children, especially when yourself is introverted too. And also, I think it's more about building a bridge between your children and the external world, because in the family, it's a safer environment where your children can be whatever he or she wants to be, and it's they're protected. But when they're in school or when they're at work, there are different expectations, or there are different social interactions they need to take. There are like stimuli from all over the place. So I think for introverted parents, it's very beneficial for them to prepare their children for that new environment, and also creating that bridge with the children and the external world. For example, if you want to put your children into a debate team or new sports team, you need to be that advocate of your children. You need to talk to the coach, talk to the teachers, say, hey, my child is more introverted, and this is how he or she function the best. And in some situations, he or she needs more time, but he'll be okay, she'll be okay, and I'll be here facilitating the whole process. So I think having that advocate is really beneficial for introverted children, just so that people would know them better, and they know that they can successfully interact with outside environment or communities with your guidance and some protections.
For sure. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to pass it off to Patty now to wrap up. But before we do, could you please tell everybody like where to find you on social media, where to buy your book? I know there's a Chinese version as well. So if you could share information about where to buy both the English and the Chinese version, and then your social media information.
Yeah, sure. So the English version is available on Amazon. And also, if you're interested in buying from independent bookstores, you can find your favorite independent bookstore from indiebound.com. And the Chinese version is available on 博客来. That's a Taiwanese-based ebook platform. They do international shipping, so there'll be no problem at all. And also, please feel free to visit my website, which is injill.com. And you can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, searching by Jill Chang, INJILLCHANG.
Thank you so much, Jill. So now here comes the moment to find out who the lucky winners are. Jill has prepared her signature cards with a beautiful handwritten quote, "Still water runs deep." That totally echoes with the superpower of introverts, I think. Privacy will contact each winner separately to get. So here's the book that the children's book from the latest children's book by Jill for Tin, our lucky winner for the book. And last but not least, I wanted to thank you. This event was brought to you by our dedicated volunteers, Steve Chang, who brought us our cards back, Faye, Xinfei too. She helped us with a lot of the flyers, and Leona, our panelists, Jen, Amanda, and myself. All right, thank you so much for spending part of your Thursday evening with us, and I hope you guys enjoyed the session and found the information valuable, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.